We have to have a presentation of the gospel, but we also have to have presence of Almighty God working with us.
Hey, Jason, why don't you tell us your story, introduce yourself, just for any of the people watching this video.
Okay. My name's Jason Hagen, and I kind of my story with the Vineyard. I was not raised in the church or Christianity, kind of probably the opposite of that, but I was also raised to, figure it out for myself, kind of hippie-ish in some ways. And so when I was a young teenager, one of my best friends, would tell me about this Calvary Chapel, and he's like, you go up front, they do this thing at the end, you go up front and everyone claps for you, and we should go do it. So I'm like, okay. So I think I was wearing a Black Sabbath t-shirt, and his grandma would haul us off to church every Sunday. We'd go to Calvary Chapel. We liked it a lot in Gardena, California. And so the altar call comes, we go up, everyone claps for us. Wade's like, my friend Wade's like, people will be crying. It's crazy. And I'm just like, it was just kind of like just checking it out, So then we go into the room and they give us a Bible and they tell Wade, here's a Bible. And he's like, oh, I already got like 3 of them. This is my 3rd or my 4th time. And just the puzzled look on their face. But anyway, like any type of salvation stories, that was mine. Basically, I said yes to go up front. And I think a week later, his grandma, Wade's grandma, gave me a Chuck Smith study guide on the New Testament. And I just started reading it. And just this relationship with Jesus started, and I think I was 15. So that just kind of, all of a sudden, we came back to high school that next year as juniors, me and my group of friends, and everyone's like, we heard you guys are Jesus freaks. And we're like, yeah. Like, we had quit using drugs, quit smoking, I quit drinking and stuff. So it was just kind of like this transformation from sophomore year to junior year.
Yeah.
And somewhere around the late 80s, we started hearing about the Vineyard, and some of our friends were like, we got to go check it out. So we would drive out to the Anaheim Vineyard. At that time, it was over by Disneyland. And I remember the first time I got there, and they were like, we got to get there early because we want to be in the first few rows. And I was like, I just was kind of like grossed out by it, like racing to get to church, and we were waiting at the door and people were fighting to get in the front rows. But we got in the first few rows, and then worship started, and I couldn't believe like the volume, not just of the PA, but like the people, the church singing I was just like overtaken by like this intensity. And so we just kept doing that, driving out on the weekends. Pretty soon we started going Sunday morning and Sunday night. Then the church moved, and some people in the church kind of adopted us because they knew we were driving far to go to the morning service and then the night service. And it happened to be the Rethmeyers, who, we didn't know. They just kind of befriended us, and we didn't really know their history in the Vineyard or anything. So they just opened up their house to us and said, even if we're not here, you guys here's a key to our house. You can spend your days in our house while you wait for the night service. So we just did that for like a time, and I was running sound and doing some mixing for live sound, so started doing some stuff for the Vineyard, and just kind of falling into it, like listening to Wimber. And I think the first few times it was kind of like, he wasn't like super dynamic or anything. I didn't really get it. I was used to Calvary, which was really kind of really straight biblical teaching, and it was just very different. But and it wasn't totally to my liking, some of the stuff. But through that time, I had people pray for me, and dramatic stuff happened. And I saw things that were contradictory to what I probably believed. But I was feeling it. I was sensing it. I was seeing the healing. I was having prophecies over me, and just kind of was really getting intrigued.
Are you saying like you were not charismatic, essentially?
Yeah, like definitely not. I mean, I was like,
then you were having.
I was fine with like reading the Bible,
and
saying a prayer, and preaching the gospel.
Okay.
But like this other stuff was kind of foreign to me.
Yeah.
And in one sense, it's part of my nature to be kind of mystical, but in another sense, I'm like, really, it wasn't working for me. But
gotcha.
I had some experiences, and some people say some things to me in prayer that were like direct things that, no one knew, or things that I thought, or things. Yeah. insecurities I had about myself that people affirmed or broke down and stuff. And it was just really transformative. And then, so I was kind of like doing stuff for what at the time was VMI, Vineyard Ministries International. And then it really kind of came to a head in 92. They did a healing conference at the Anaheim Vineyard, the new Anaheim Vineyard that had moved. And it was going to be 1 week. And it sold out, and so we did 2 consecutive weeks. So I like worked like 8-10 hours a day doing the book table and just kind of working at the vineyard just randomly, and at this point I don't really have any concept of how highly the vineyard was thought of by certain people, or Wimber, or all this stuff. It was just church to me at this stage. I mean, which was good, but I was learning more and more things, and these 2 weeks were just crazy, because it was just, I mean, I think people showed up at like 8 a.m. and we were at church till midnight, and people were just not wanting to leave, and so it was kind of crazy. And at that stage I had met who would become my wife, so I was driving out there to see her, and I was working out there, and like, why don't you just come to work for us full time? So in 92 I went to work full time for Vineyard Ministries International. And at that stage, so, John was still the senior pastor at Anaheim, so he did our staff meetings. So it was kind of cool. Like, I didn't have, like, at this stage, any type of personal relationship with John, but our staff meetings were with John, and so just to get to see kind of, just very down-to-earth person talking about real stuff. Like, it was, the doing business, so to speak, not to make it sound crass, but, kind of like how
behind the
things are run.
scenes.
Yeah, just,
not just Sunday morning preaching.
Right. It was like, how do we make this all work? And, so I just started working at VMI, would still do some sound stuff at conferences and things. And then, in 95, Chris Wimber, my friendship was with Chris Wimber, John's son, and he asked me to move to the UK to do to run Vineyard Ministries International UK, Vineyard Ministries International UK, whatever, VMI UK, and so me and my wife moved there in the mid '90s and did that, and at that stage, Chris had already been diagnosed with cancer, and we knew it was terminal, but we really didn't know, and I don't think I believed it was going to happen, But eventually, we moved back, and Chris was getting sicker. But at that stage, it was kind of like, well, John's going to be here. Chris is probably going to die, but John's going to be here. Everything's going to be okay. And then John dies, so it just kind of like pulled the rug out from under us. It was kind of a trip. So, if I backtrack, I should say my first experience with John, I was working with the bands that were on this label that had been created called New Breed, and there's a whole history, story about the name and all that, and there's other people to talk to about that. But they did a meeting at Chris Wimber's house, and so it was all the bands, and we were all young, and John talking to us and kind of giving us his philosophy. And I remember thinking, he's just an old man. He just doesn't get it. He doesn't get, he's telling us to stay in the church, and we were all kind of like wild at this stage. And, it took a lot of years, but I don't remember like exact details of everything. I remember being a little put off by it. And within a few years being like, wow, he was right. Like, man, that was good. That was a good word for us. And even though I kind of pushed it away, it did kind of ground me of like
staying connected to community,
staying connected, and
accountability, support, prayer.
Yeah, all those things. And like I said, I wasn't like personal friends with John, but what I saw in my interactions with him, it was always kind of concerned about people's lives. Like, don't go be a rock star because this is dangerous. Not that he wasn't, like, he was so aware of the dangers of becoming separated or disconnected from the church or from people, and the things that would happen, so it was, it was like, just keep your zipper up. He used to say to, I heard him say, I don't need to speak for what everyone heard, but, So my main one-on-one interactions happened with John when I was going to move to the UK. Chris told me, you need to spend every moment you can with my dad. So I would go to his office and I didn't know what to ask, or, I just kind of would hang out with him and absorb. So when we drive Chris up to, I think it was like Santa Monica where he would get his chemo treatments. So it was like an hour drive or 45-minute drive. So we would drive up and I'd sit with John and then sit with John in the waiting area when Chris would get chemo. And kind of pick his brain, but I didn't really even know the questions to ask. So he would just kind of give me wisdom. And it was usually just about people, or like, here's people to connect with in the UK. Here's my friend. Here's what you want to do. And it was never like, my one-on-one experiences with John were never like sound bites. It wasn't like these little drops of wisdom. I felt like I just kind of gleaned from his humility. I, at this stage and later, would be around a lot of leaders that were well known, and John was just by far the humblest. Like, he lived humbly. He, just saw himself as just someone who cared for people, and so that's really impactful to me. To have someone who's could, if they wanted to be very aloof and kind of have a cult of personality. And my perceptions in my time with him was that he actually worked counter towards that. And just had humility. That wasn't afraid to admit when he was wrong. Didn't hold shame. Didn't like shame himself for mistakes. Just kind of moved on. Like, yeah, well, that happened. And I just loved that kind of very down to earth, easygoing attitude towards the gospel and relationship with God. It just really helped me to like, this thing isn't so weird. Like, it shouldn't be so weird. I don't want to have a weird relationship with my Creator. And being around him and seeing him operate really helped me ground in that kind of stuff.
We have to have a presentation of the gospel, but we also have to have presence of Almighty God working with us.